Well, I'm sitting by the fire here at the copper hearth, and I'd like to share a short story by one of our favorite Irish 20th century authors named Walter Macken. And this particular story is called The Currach Race. So, The Currach Race by Walter Macken. It all developed from Colum's visits to Sidahu's house on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. He knew that he was not really welcome there. Welcome to Sidahu, and welcome to her mother Siobhan, and to her younger brother Fintan. But the principal person in the house, Sidahu's father Donna, was terribly polite to him, and listened so carefully to all his opinions that Colum felt sweat breaking out all over him. All the others combined with their kindness and affection and good wishes toward him would be almost completely ineffective against the disapproval of the principal member. He hadn't wanted to come to the house at all, but Sidahu kept pressing him. "You will have to face up to him," she said. "Let him see what you are, and he will get to like you, even though you do not like the sea." That was the trouble. The village faced into the Atlantic. Sometimes the Atlantic smiled on them, and sometimes it frowned. But the people knew all its moods now, and they plowed their stony fields in times, and in times they took their currachs out and plowed the sea for fish, to augment their food supplies, or to sell them to the avid men from the town within who came in their lorries. Colum was different. Colum didn't like the sea. He thought it took too much for the little it gave, so he concentrated on the stony fields. His father before him was the same. He cleared his fields of the stones, and he manured them well, and plowed them and protected them with tough trees and high stone walls from the destruction of the salt-laden winds from the sea. Sometimes then, when a family had died out, from emigration or from the quick, vicious, and unexpected death that the Atlantic occasionally brought, Colum's father, and after him Colum, would buy the empty holding and would patiently rip the stones from the fields with crowbars or sticks of gelignite, and would manure and plow and tend until, by the present time, they had a holding of 20 acres, not counting bogland and the grouse land of the low hills. His place was a marvel, because it actually paid. He was the only man inside 8 parishes of this townland to have a farm that grew sweetly and paid a return, without him ever wetting an oar in a wave. He laid his fields out in the high-priced vegetables that he sold in the town. He kept 3 cows with bursting udders. He sold their milk and the butter from their milk in the town. Colum prospered from the attended land, and with a grant from the government he tore off the thatched roof of his house and built a slated roof in its place. He erected new stables, too, with asbestos roofing on them, and they were very warm and clean inside, so that the cows were pleased with them in the cold Atlantic winters, and gave him a good return. So why should Donna disapprove of him? Colum tried to figure it out, sitting there in the wooden chair out from the open fireplace. He was a big man with large, capable hands that he was wiping against each other now. He had a big face that was shaved clean, and he had on a new navy blue suit with the tailor's crease still in it. Donna was leaning back in his chair, one hobnailed foot resting on his knee. He was dressed in the coarse homespun trousers and the gray wool shirt and the white bannon coat. What was good enough for my father is good enough for me. He was 60 years and more of age, but he was long, lean, and lithe, and only gave away his age in the temple gray of his wiry black hair and the few gray bristles of his unshaven face. His stomach was as flat as the top of a table, and although Colum knew he hadn't more than 10 shillings in the blue jug on the dresser and wasn't likely to have in the future, all the same, Colum felt that Donna was a better man than he would ever be. And every line of the body of the man, every weather wrinkle on his brown face, said that thing over and over again. Colum thought, will I go away now altogether? And then he looked over at Sidahu. She was at the table by the dresser, drying the dishes for her mother. Her hair was black too, and it waved in an unruly fashion, and her skin was very clear. She was wearing a blue dress with white dots on it and was belted to her narrow waist. And the way she was standing, you could see the long, shapely length of her thigh. Her eyes caught his, and she seemed to be saying, "Don't go away." And Colum realized how much he loved Suruhu. So he said, "To hell with the old devil," and sat straight in his chair and stopped rubbing his hands together. "So you don't like boats, Mr. Colum?" said Donna, very politely. "I didn't say I didn't like boats," said Colum. "I just said that there's too much time taken up with boats in the village. That's all I said. I like a boat now and again. I like to take a currach out in the sea of a Sunday and catch a few fat pollock on the long line and cook them for the supper. But I think that the more a man gives to his land, the more he gets out of it. And the more he gives to the sea, the less he gets out of it. And if it doesn't kill him in the end, it drains the life out of him." "Now I'm done with," he thought, seeing the flash of dismay in Siddhu's eyes. "I should have kept my big mouth shut. It's many the time a person's mouth broke his nose, but I'm not a hypocrite. And if Siddhu really was for me, she would choose between her own father and myself and be done with it. It wasn't that either. It was just that she loved her father and wouldn't hurt him. Although how anybody could love the old devil, I fail to see," Colum thought sourly. "It wouldn't be that you'd be afraid of the boats now, Mr. Colum," Donna went on, as polite as ever, like the blade of a sharp, gutting knife. "You're the oddest man that ever was bred in this village, if you are." "It's just that we don't agree," said Colum, "and maybe now we better leave it there." "Fair enough," said Donna. "That's where we'll leave it. Would you come to Canales beyond now, and we'll drink a glass of stout together? Or do you be against stout drinking, too?" "All right," said Colum. "I will go to Canales with you." This is kiss goodbye now, he thought. He told Siru that he didn't like coming into her house. He never would be able to get around saying, "Siru and Messel want to be married, Donna, and she would like you to like it if you can." Everyone in the whole place knew about Siru and himself, even Donna, but it would choke him to get the words out. So he didn't, and that was that. And now they would have to seek another solution. "We won't be long, Siobhan," Donna was saying to his wife. "I'll be back in about half an hour." He emphasized the "I'll." Sidhu's mother had a worried frown between her eyes. "All right, Donna," she said. "Come back again sometime, Colum," she said. Make another effort to get on with Donna. "I'll walk you to the road," said Sirhu, coming out of the door after them and taking Colum's hand when they hit the moonlight outside. The hand farthest away from her father. She pressed it with her fingers and held the back of his hand for a moment against her thigh. Just a warm pressure of sympathy. That's a woman for you. "Don't get drunk now, Lecce," she said, standing near the road and watching them away. It was a very brave night, frosty, with many stars and a fresh breeze that drove clouds like sheep across the face of the moon, so it seemed to be racing and grinning down at them. Donna stood there beside them, implacably, so that they couldn't talk. "Go back into the house now, girl," he said, "or you'll be catching cold." "Good night," said Sidhu, and turned away. Like two strangers, they walked the half-mile to the pub. There was a 3-foot space of dislike between them. Donna was taller than Colum. He walked straighter. He had powerful shoulders. Colum was low, but he was strong. He was a fisherman and a farmer walking the road, and for all the affinity they had, they might as well have been engaged in their respective occupations. Colum was glad when they left the frosty road for the smuggy yellow light of Canales. It was full of men. There was a low counter and a few forms and half-barrels on which he could sit. There was the smell of porter in the guttering paraffin lamp and a fog of twist tobacco. They were greeted. Donna got a more fulsome greeting than Colum. Donna insisted on paying for the 2 pints that were set up for them. Colum swallowed his slowly. Donna downed his almost in a gulp. Colum ordered 2 more, paid for them from the small leather purse he carried in his pocket, and then he sat in a barrel and felt miserable and lonely, but never once wished he was a fisherman, so that he could have suitor in the church without question, and so that he would be able to laugh and be great friends of the men in Kenealy's pub. He just sat there and thought, and he didn't know what time it was that he took an interest in the conversation. Donna was arguing with the Connollys, with old Kenealy behind the counter backing him up. What was it about? It was about boats. The 2 B's, Colum often thought before. They go together, boats and boasting. The Connollys were 2 brothers, twins in appearance, tall, orangy men with great chests and unshaven chins. They were laughing at Donna. "We're the 2 finest men that ever went into a currach," they were saying. "If you put Finn MacCool and Gall MacMorna and Cuchulainn in a boat apart from us, and if you tied the right arm to our sides, we would give them a 4-mile lead and beat them home." They laughed, showing great white teeth in their dark faces, and they banged their pint glasses on the counter. "The 2 of ye," Donna was saying. "I'm an old man. I'm nearly double the age of ye. I could go out on that bay tomorrow morning. If I had a child in the boat with me to balance, and I could welt the 2 of ye. Is that right, Kenealy?" "You were a powerful man in a boat," said Kenealy sincerely, "and your father before you was the same. If your father was alive, God rest him, and was in the seat with you in the same boat, there isn't 2 men in Ireland could whip ye." "What?" asked James, the taller Connolly. "Is it poor old Donna? What man, days away he might have been good, but the salt has the meat eaten off him now. He's fit for nothing better now but being a gilly for stupid fishermen on an inshore lake." Donna was in a red rage. He cursed them. He called them names. They laughed at him. They were all a little drunk by this anyhow. All the men in the pub had closed around them, and with sly grins were urging them on. Donna was squaring up, as old men will do when their virility is questioned. He was hitching at his belt. There was a fire in his eye. "Come on now," he was saying. "Come on out now. Drag down your boats into the light of the moon, and we'll launch them, and I'll take on the 2 of ye." "Ah, look now," Kenealy was saying, becoming a little afraid that things might get hot. "Cool off, men. There's tomorrow. Tomorrow's a holy holiday. Settle it tomorrow." "I'll take them on tonight or tomorrow, any day in the year," Donna was shouting. "There wasn't a Connolly born yet that I couldn't bait blindfolded on the sea or the shore. I'll fight them now, the 2 of them here on this spot, if they want it that way." He was pulling at his coat. Colin must have been a little drunk, too. "Don't be an old fool, Donna," he shouted over the din. Donna calmed down, hitched up his coat, and turned slowly to face him. "All right," he said. "Mr. Colum tells me to calm down. I'm calm now, men. We'll make this fit. Here you have me, an old man. There you have 2 young men whose mouths are stronger than their hearts. We'll launch 2 currachs tomorrow after last Mass, and we'll have a trial of strength across the bay. Them in one boat, and me in the other, and Colum here coming with me to balance it. He knows nothing about boats, you know. He doesn't approve of boats, you know. So he can just sit on his tailcoat and flip an oar if there's that much good in him. And I'll still bait ye. Hear that now? Well, Mr. Colum, what do you say to that now?" Colum should have gone home. He realized that later. But the old man had him mad too. Maybe I can row a boat better than any man here," he said. "Maybe I can now. Maybe I can show some of ye heroes that a farmer is a better man in a boat than any 2 of ye. What has come over me? The things I despise, the 2 B's, boasting and boats, and here I am in the middle of them, all because an old man looks at me with scorn and derision and taunting in his eyes. I don't like him. This has nothing to do with his daughter. This is just something between him and me." They stood up straight and glared at each other, and Colin put down his glass and walked out of the place. He heard laughter following him into the night. In a city, if two men come along and dig a hole in the street, they can gather an audience of thousands of people. After last Mass on St. Patrick's Day in the village, there were hundreds of people gathered on the two necks of land which embrace the sea on either side of the strand. The whole place was shaped like a C, lying down, facing downward like a horseshoe. 6 miles of rough sea separated the two arms. The sun was cold looking, and there was a good breeze traveling from the direction of America. You would swear that the sea was clapping its hands, because somebody had told it there were 4 fools who might otherwise have remained out of its grip at this time of the year. The tips of the arms were like rocky promontories, like 2 spear points of tested metal which dug into the waves and broke them up. They were festooned with people. There was color there, all the lassies in their Sunday clothes, and the old women in red petticoats and check aprons and plaid kerchiefs. The sun gleamed off the handlebars of bicycles lying grotesquely in the fields. They were chattering and laughing loudly and laying bets on the event. Colin went through agonies of embarrassment as he made his way down to the south point. People made way for him and pointed him out. He felt cold in his stomach. He had given up wondering what had possessed him the night before, and he had come down here hoping that it was only a drunken dare and that he could go home and forget all about it. The sights of all the people disillusioned him. The sight of Donna sitting nonchalantly on the edge of his upside-down currach convinced him. He made his way to him. Said Donna. I was wondering if you'd turn up. Colin didn't answer him. He just stood there and tightened his eyes against the glare of the sea. He didn't turn round where the people were crowding. What would Sarah think of him? Where are the Connollys? He asked hopefully, hoping that they might have died in a night of convulsions. Here they are now, said Donna, nodding his head behind him. They came down towards the narrow quay, carrying the currach on their shoulders. Their heads were hidden under it so that you only saw their legs walking by. It looked funny. People addressed remarks to them as they arrived, and their voices and laughter boomed from inside the boat. They reached the quay and lifted the boat from their shoulders. So you're here, said James. I thought you might have run out of the country for shame. His brother was grinning, too. Might have been better for them to have run away, he said. Won't they be the laughing-stock of the whole of Connemara in about 4 hours? I wouldn't waste my breath on ye, said Donna, rising. And what Pat Keneally gets here to start us off, I'm going to be sorry for the pair of ye. Here's old Pat now, somebody behind him said, and Pat comes down in his bowler hat, puffing because the only exercise he ever took was pulling at porter. Right, men, said Pat. Launch the crafts till we get this over. Great day, he went on, rubbing his hands and counting with his eyes the number of porter drinkers on the two necks. We'll have a great day when this is over. This will go down the history of the parish, so it will, and may the best man win. Colin, said Suitor, catching his sleeve and making him turn towards her. Her hair was wild in the wind, and she seemed to be angry. What are you doing this for? She asked, not caring whether Donna heard her or not. Don't you know he only wants to make a joke of you? He doesn't care about the old race. He cares about you. He'll always say, if only I hadn't that fool of a farmer in the boat. That's what he'll say. Don't heed them now, Colin. Walk away from this with me, and if you like, I'll never set a foot again in my father's house. Colin sensed Donna's silence, the tight anger of Sarah. Who'd have believed it of Sarah? Well, what am I waiting for? Nothing except the something primitive that's in all men. They've laughed at me before, Sarah, he said, and please God they'll laugh at me again. But this is different. This is something else. I'm going out on that sea if it's the end of me. It's likely to be the end of you, she said, stamping her foot. She had nice Sunday shoes on, he noticed, and her legs looked very rich in the silk stockings. There's a good sea out there, and it's a treacherous place between the two necks. There'll be 4 men in the boat, said Colum, 3 fishermen and a farmer. And if I'm the only one of them that can't fish, I'll take me oath. I'm the only one of them that can swim, and that's something. If you're coming, said the voice of Donna, let you be launching the boat with me. If you don't want to come, I'll take suitor. I'm off now, sir, said Colum, turning away from her. He gave them all a big laugh then. He carefully removed his navy blue coat and folded it and laid it on a rock. He was wearing a collar and tie, and he removed these too. The 2 Connollys were already in their boat on the water, holding to the side of the pier with their thick hands. They were unshaved and had jerseys on them with the white banning coats over them. They looked so different to the Colum on the pier in his white shirt and his trousers with the lovely crease. People around started giggling. He couldn't blame them, as men said afterwards. It was a cruel shame to have a swank like Colum getting into a currach. They launched the boat. Colum looked out at the running sea and felt the lightness of the currach that was nothing but tarred canvas stretched over thin laths, and he didn't feel very well. All right. He tightened his jaw muscles. The currach was leaping around like a cork on the water. Donna lowered himself into it, and it steadied a bit. Colum sat in the seat behind him. The Connollys were laying off from the pier now, riding the rough waves with seemingly effortless ease, flipping the top of the waves with the heavy oars. Pat Keneally was shouting, his hands around his mouth. Get off on a line out beyonce, and let you be ready to go on a shouts. Donna tugged the water with his oars, and they flew away from the pier. Colum tried to match his stroke with his own, but missed the wave and locked his right oar under Donna's. The boat slewed around and headed back for the pier. He reddened at the remarks from the shore. Let them trail, said Donna, not sharply. Watch my back, and don't be watching me oars. When I lean, you lean, and when I pull, you pull. He turned the boat again. Colum held the oars free of the waves and watched the rhythm in front of him. Then he took it up. After all, he had been in boats before. It's just that this whole thing was upsetting. Rowing a currach wasn't that hard. Look at them from the shore. Nothing much to it. They lined up beside the Connollys, who were spitting on a hand a time as they freed them from the oars. They were grinning, not talking, just grinning. They shouldn't have been, because Donna was watching the shore and saw the raised hand of Pat Keneally and saw it fall. His shout was whipped away by the wind and came late, so that before they received it, cute old Donna was 4 boat lengths away and getting into his stride. It's not too bad, Colum thought. It's a chip-chop movement. You don't dig in the oars, you chip them in and chop them out of the waves. The water was green and was breaking into white at its tops. It was also very wet. They were running parallel to the waves, so that they were up and down, and sometimes the waves broke into the boat, and Colum felt the seawater on his legs, soaking through his lovely blue trousers, with the tailor's crease still in them, now gone forever. He shortly began to feel the strain on the tendons of his left arm. The waves were hitting the bow of the boat and were driving it in, and this had to be countered by stronger pulling on the left oars. It didn't matter for some time. He tightened his big hands about the oars and pulled hard. In, out, chip, chop. I could do this before my breakfast. He could see over Donna's shoulder the Connollys' boat coming behind them. They seemed to be pulling effortlessly. The 2 bodies acted as if they were on the one string. He could see muscles bulging under the clothes of Donna's back. His neck was burned almost black from his years of sun. His neck was wrinkled, and the tendons stood out on it. He's a good man in a boat, was Colum's thought. Colum tugged away joyously. They began to increase their lead. Take it easy. Take it easy. He heard the voice of Donna then. Save a bit for the road home. Remember that. Colum sobered. 6 miles across and 6 miles back. That made 12 miles. Would they do 3 miles an hour? Say 4 hours? Could I keep this up for 4 hours? Well, why not? I'll show them. They heard the people shouting behind them as they approached the other neck. They were still in the same positions. The Connolly boat was almost 4 boat lengths behind them, but Colum now could only see them through the waves of pain. Pull your right now. You're right now, he heard Donna shouting, and he automatically put pressure on his right oar. It was almost a pleasure, because his left arm seemed to be numb. The cross waves caught them on the turn, and water poured into the boat. Colum could feel it soaking into his body from the waist down. Then they were facing the crowded neck and were headed back, and the awful strain of the sea was pressing intolerably on the tendons of his right arm. He saw the people on the neck standing up, waving and shouting, but he couldn't see their faces for the mist that was in front of his eyes. He thought his eyes were wanting to burst out of their sockets. He heard Donna's voice again. Pull with your right and bail with your left. Bail with your left, here? Colum let his left oar trail and fumbled behind him until his fingers found the tin can. It was rusty. He started to scoop out the water that was up as far as their shins. Donna was doing the same, and if he could have seen, the Connollys were doing the same. It was a relief to stretch the fingers of his hand any way than about the oar. His hands had been blistered before from the grip of a spade or a slane or a scythe or the handles of a plow, but never as painfully as this. Where blood blisters rose and burst in your palm, and when the water blister replaced the blood, you felt an intolerable agony that seemed to knife its way all over your body. Take it up now, take it up, said the voice of Donna. Colum took a pull again on his right oar. The arms seemed to have been pulled from their sockets now and were lying loosely held there only by the skin. There was a band of something about his chest that was pressing his lungs, so the breath came rasping from between his lips. He had to breathe often. He didn't seem able to get enough air at all. The whole world was green, enveloping him. A green world on which he rose and fell, and little people went with the waves who had tied ropes around all his limbs and were dragging him apart. He heard Donna saying strange things. Will we stop, Colum? He was asking. It wasn't a just thing to do. Let us stop now, in the name of God, and there will be shame from none for us. Colum got some words out. You didn't call me Mr. Colum, he said. You're a good man, Colum, he heard him say then, and I'm an old fool. Colum's breath was rasping from his chest. Donna, he said, can I have your daughter, Sarah? Colum, said Donna, if I had 10 daughters, you could have the 10 of them. But let us ease up now. It was a terrible thing I have done, and if you go on and we have to row into the shore and you a corpse, what will my daughter Sarah say to me? Donna, said Colum, whereabouts are your men, the Connollys? They are 5 minutes or more ahead of us, Colum, said Donna. And if God above was with me in this Currach now, there's not a thing even he could do about it. Donna, said Colum, let us row like fair hell and catch up the Connollys. He heard Donna laughing. By God, we'll try, Colum, he said, and win, lose, or draw, I'd fight the whole of Ireland for you, and the wedding of my daughter will be the greatest event that ever happened in the province of Connaught. The people on the shore saw a strange sight. Out there on the galloping waves, 2 black corks bobbing about, like corks kids throw into channels with matchsticks stuck out of them. And one was far ahead of the other, and in the second boat for some time the second rower seemed to be bent double over his oars and patting at the waves as if he was playing with them. And then the man seemed to straighten, and the second boat seemed to put on speed and to be slowly and surely catching up on the boat ahead. The people from the far neck had raced across from there to this neck, so there was a great crowd on all the vantage places, and they were all stretching and leaning and crying shouts out of them like oyster catchers on lonely beaches. Who crossed the point first? You can go back to that village now and go into Pat Keneally's pub for a pint. And when you've become strong in drink, you can express an opinion as to who won the famous Currach race. In all probability, you will end up the evening with a black eye. It was the Connollys, I tell ye. It was not. Didn't I see with me own eyes that Donald's boat was the width of 2 oar blades ahead of them? Weren't they bet to the wide, weren't they? Who ever heard the like? 2 grown men against an old man and a dung boy that never saw a boat in his life, and they whipped the divil out of them. Now listen, Mr. Whoever you are. Whatever happened after, that day, the 4 men were taken to the pier like real heroes, and they were hoisted up on shoulders and carried in triumph up to Pat's place. They got 4 free pints, which was a record for Pat. And Colin was clapped on the back as if he was a real fisherman. And when he got out of there, he headed for Sarah's place, and she was halfway to meet him on the road. They crossed a field to where Colin had his haystack tied up for the winter, and he kissed her there. And then he fainted clear away. And it took her 5 solid minutes of kissing him and loosing his shirt front and fanning him before he opened his eyes to the darkening sky. He rubbed the worry from her forehead with his bruised fingers. I'm sorry, Sarah, he said. But listen, your old fella is a great man. That's odd, said Sir who was crying. That's the very thing he is shouting about you. The Currach Race by Walter Macken.